My name is Eve Dombra. I'm on the board of the Rhinebeck Historical Society. I see some familiar faces and some people who I haven't seen before, so I could ask you, if you haven't signed in as you come in, on the table out there, you might want to sign in on your way out. And notice that we have many flyers, which are our newsletters, which give you an idea of our programs and our events. Many of you know that we're open Tuesdays and Thursdays to the public, and we entertain research requests. People come in wanting to look up the history of their houses, their ancestors, and other things, and we're very happy to help them with that. In our newsletter and on our website, you also see that we're engaged in an exciting project to digitize our local newspaper, the Rhinebeck Gazette, from a generous gift. And our membership has been very generous in allowing us to digitize not only the 19th century Rhinebeck Gazettes, but into the 20th century. So we all know how important local journalism is and our history, right, at our very roots. So we're excited about that. You can read about that on our website and in our different newsletters. So for our programs, one important thing we do is have, usually at a Friday, last Friday of the month, have a program here. And before I get to Elisabeth Barnett, I'll just announce what's coming up. And on April 25th at 7 o'clock, we have Dwayne and Linda Watson of Wilderstein speaking on 200 years of fashion preserved at Wilderstein. So we look forward to that. And then in May 30th, also always at 7 p.m. on a Friday, we have Matthew Moneypenny, the director of the Southlands Foundation, on Southlands past and present. So we look to Deborah Dowse and others. So for tonight, right, we're on the verge of spring. We're all thinking of going outdoors. For this talk, a group of us on the board were wanting to emphasize the natural beauty of our home, the Hudson Valley, and we're also thinking about the rich tradition of art, the Hudson River School. We thought, why not ask a contemporary artist who goes outside and paints and works in the landscape? So through the network of artists in Rhinebeck, my husband Frank Pelaya and I have met Elisabeth Barnett at various events. We thought of inviting her. Elisabeth lives in Rhinebeck, has studied with several known artists. She's active as an artist in the community and juried shows and other events. And she does different types of painting, but important to her is working outside in the landscape. And she finds joy in that. And for this, we look forward to this talk, which is entitled Artists Still Paint Hudson Valley Landscapes, One Artist's Perspective. So I join me in welcoming Elisabeth Barnett.
Thank you, Eve. And I want to make sure everybody has them. A lot of people have them already, but maybe you could share them with anyone who doesn't.
Anybody doesn't have the little handout?
I have them.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you for that nice introduction. I'm really pleased to be talking here today. I do find joy in painting. It's probably the most fun thing I've ever done, and I take a lot of pleasure being in the Hudson Valley and getting a chance to go outside and paint, which I do in the good weather. When it's not so good, I tend to paint indoors. And we actually have a group. One of our members is here today, Robin. Oh, Rosemary's here too. Okay. Yeah, so we meet at the Red Hook Community Center on Wednesday morning. So if anybody wants to come and paint, it's just open for people who'd like to join us and paint. So, good. So my presentation today, we're going to start off, we did the introduction, we're going to start off looking at some paintings I've done, and on the back of your handout you'll see there's a place to write down to try to identify the places in the paintings. So we're going to do that first, and whoever gets the most right gets a prize, and everybody else gets a little prize.
I did.
So we're going to do that first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of painting in the Hudson Valley. And this is not an area where I have a great deal of expertise, but I've enjoyed doing a little more research and, adding that to some of the things I've learned in the past. And last of all, I will talk about my process. So, what it has taken, or what it takes to actually go through the decisions you make, when you're doing a painting, and kind of some of the things that I weigh as I'm going along, and show you one painting that I've come up with through that process. I also want to share the names of some other people who I hope you will look at, and I realized that I was only thinking of oil painters when I did that, so there's also some wonderful watercolor and pastel artists and collage people and many other things. So anyway, so to start, on the back, is there anybody that needs a pencil? No, we all good? Okay.
There are a bunch of pencils on that chair.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Okay.
You gave them out.
All right. So some of these are going to be easy and some are going to be hard. So I'm going to give you like 20 seconds to write down what you think it is. And then we'll see if anybody can identify this.
We're doubling up here. We're doubling up here.
Oh, yeah. You need another pencil? Here's one. Yep. Okay. Anybody want to volunteer? Where's this? Yep. Yep, you're in Mohawk. Happens to be from the Gatehouse over in New Paltz. And they've had some very nice occasions where they invite people to paint, all along that Gatehouse area. So, okay. Everybody be quiet. Trying to see who can look. You got about 20 seconds to just think about it. All right, who wants to volunteer? Who is this? Okay.
You're from Alana?
Yep. From right up next to the house. If you're standing by the house, this was actually, yeah. So this was actually done in the winter, looking down, at the Hudson River. All right, how about this one? This one's a little bit harder, maybe. So take 20 seconds. Don't. Yeah.
Mid-Hudson Bridge.
All right, I've got a eager person.
I think it's in the Ronda.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So it's looking at that bridge in the rundown if you're like right next to Mariners Harbor. On the roundout in Kingston. So if you're right next to that restaurant, Mariners Harbor, or where the boat goes out into the Hudson, and you look up, you see that bridge there. All right.
That's great.
Roundout Creek. Oh, that's not the name of the
Okay.
Blythewood
Yes.
Gardens at
Yep.
Bard.
Yep. So Blythewood, a Bard campus, right in the back. Really nice place to paint. You can look out across the river, or you can paint the gardens. Okay.
The Asters? Roosevelt.
Okay, Rosemary, go ahead.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, okay, so at the Vanderbilt Mansion, if you're on the north end of the property, there's this really amazing view looking across. There's actually 2 little islands, and it's a really fun place to paint too. There's other places there. There's a nice bridge, and yeah. Okay, I don't know if anybody will know this one.
This one. Oh, it's beautiful. My favorite.
Is it on Frost Road?
No?
It's Deborah's place.
Deborah. Do you know the name of the road? Because I don't know who
Yeah.
owns the place.
It's not that
Not Sawkill, not Sawkill, no.
No.
Is that the Beacon Falls? No.
No. It's on Miller Road.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're thinking of?
Skylar, Miller, Dam.
Yeah, kind of across from Schuyler House. Yeah. Is that how you say it? Yeah. So there's kind of across. You go up Miller Road, and just kind of hiding back there is this little waterfall. But Let's give everybody just a minute to try to identify it first. You want to do this one?
I think that's looking at the Mid-Hudson Bridge from the north
Yep.
on, what is it, Poets Walk?
Yeah, it's actually a little to the north of there, Rokeby Estate.
That's good.
I got it.
You got it? All right.
You got it, yeah.
Ooh. Oh,
I'm
okay.
confident it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, it's, Poets Walk, of course, is
Sure.
lovely. We had permission, a little group of us, to paint at the Rokeby Estate. And there's, various beautiful views. This was in this fall.
So is that the Rhine Cliff Bridge?
Yeah, yep,
Not the Mid-Hudson?
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's the
Yeah,
Rhine-
Kingston Rhinecliff.
yep, yep, yeah, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, it can't be the Mid-Hudson, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but we got the right
Yes.
place.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm completely confused.
Okay.
Oh, the
Take a
farm-
few-
The cover of somebody's new album.
It is.
I know.
Yay for Jasper Roos. This is the cover of their album.
I think I wrote it for that one.
We didn't hear where it is.
Okay. Sorry?
Where is it?
Oh, we haven't told you yet where it is. So,
Montgomery Place Orchard,
no?
no?
Amelia Island?
Wonderland. Okay,
Oh,
Wonderland.
Wonderland,
Yeah.
oh. okay.
So if you're, it's the building that's not facing the road, kind of on the side, the farm market part of that. So in the fall, they have all sorts of nice pumpkins and everything else.
On Main Street.
Yeah. Yeah, so the little farmer's market's right inside there.
I'm lost. I don't know where that is.
Wonderland?
East of the
Wonderland Market? Yeah, the flower. Yeah.
Right out of town.
Oh.
So the flower shop is facing the road and then
Okay, say
there.
no more. Now I know
Got
where it
it?
is, okay.
Okay.
Wilderstein.
Factor on the bill. Oh,
It's a beautiful retreat.
So anybody want to
That's where-
say it louder?
Yeah, because that's the lighthouse.
Hmm?
It's the
Yeah.
light, the Sophus Lighthouse?
Yep. Yep, so Wilderstein, right?
Yeah.
right.
And there's a summer picnic. This one I didn't paint during the picnic, but, took some nice pictures. Wilderstein. So beautiful house, Wilderstein, yeah.
Next month,
That the picnic?
next month's talk.
Yep.
Oh, next, yeah, that's right. And some of the fashion, but,
Good point.
all right. Take a minute.
12.
Oh, yes, oh, it's
Yeah, okay, so we got that one. Yeah, so that's right in the middle of winter. I didn't paint that outside either. That was from a photograph. I have painted outside there though.
That's the Kingston?
East Focus Meadow.
so,
So this Meadows, but from,
From the
It's taken
Statsburg
from
State
Linwood.
Yeah.
Historic Site.
yeah, yeah. And this turned out to be where somebody got married and saw this picture and decided they wanted it, so,
Nice.
yep. This one might be hard.
Someone said it's Burroughs Cottage, no?
No.
No.
No, but it's kind of a generic cottage, so it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to tell. Yeah, so actually at the Mills Mansion also, if you walk,
oh, yeah.
Oh, Hoyt?
right, no, it's not a Hoyt, that's a lot fancier.
Yeah.
But if you walk toward the Hoyt House and up a little trail, this cottage is there. This is easy.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, downtown Rhinebeck. So I did a little series of like 6 Santa Claus pictures. Those weren't fun area there, but I had fun doing them.
So really like the Wilderstein barn.
Astros.
Didn't
The Astros.
Wilderstein? No.
Isn't it the
The
Astros?
Astors, no,
Roosevelt?
Roosevelt, yeah,
Hyde Park.
yeah, it's their barn. I'm noticing that the colors are really washed out in here. What are we gonna do? This one's gonna be hard too. Yep, you got it.
What'd she say?
Yeah,
What did she
Belkill.
say?
Belkill.
Oh, I
Yeah, there's
haven't
just a
been
little
there.
building, so the main house is to the right, but there's a little building there.
So this is coming from the parking lot?
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't hear you.
Coming from the Valkill, so coming from the parking lot, there's like a little bridge, and we were painting right by that bridge. This is an easy one, I think. Maybe not. Maybe it's not an easy one. Okay, so this is, if you're looking from the train station in Rhinecliff on a foggy day and the train hasn't come yet. So that's what that is. That was also done from a photograph.
That's Claremont.
Yep.
Claremont from the parking lot, they're not walking towards the house.
Last one.
17.
Hmm?
What was 17?
Claremont. Claremont.
Okay.
So the tree there is no longer there, but this was actually
That's-
done a
That's
while
why.
ago. Uh-huh. Yep. But this is when the lilacs come out. It's so pretty there. Yeah. So here's the last one. This isn't exactly Rhinebeck. Well, this is the Ashokan Reservoir.
Oh,
So they've got those beautiful mountains.
Yeah,
All right. All right. So who got, did you guys keep track of?
real prizes.
All right. You might just have to give prizes to everybody. All right. You can, pass these around. So is there anybody that got like 16, 15?
On the failure.
All right, let's pass around the camera. All right,
Coming around.
so just to, I didn't say too much about my own history, but I started painting about 11 years ago. There was a guy in Red Hook who had a little gallery, Richard Lyle, and he had a sign up saying that he was offering lessons in plein air painting. So I walked in and started working with him and found it just, really enjoyable. It was, really a helpful way to get started with it all. But I did it very part-time because I was still working up until about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So since then, I've been, trying to spend much more time and okay, so a little bit of background on the history of painting in this area. So, I started thinking Hudson Valley School, and then I thought, okay, there's really been a lot of history before the Hudson Valley School started. Early on, obviously, there were many different Native American groups in the area. This is one map, and I'm not sure from what year exactly. But, our area was especially, likely to be inhabited by Mohawk and Delaware and Mohican groups. I looked quite a lot to try to find examples of work that had been done by people during that period, and it was hard to find very much. It was, there was more from the Southwest, but, from our area, really not a lot. And the descriptions that were given were that, for the most part, people at that time who were doing art were tending to do it for very practical purposes. So a fair amount of, pots for food and liquids, baskets and so on. The one thing I found that looked more like painting was this, and from those early periods, or somewhat early, was this Mohawk baby carrier. And, it has natural images on it, so, it clearly was, kind of um, an expression of what people were seeing, you know, around them or finding beautiful. So I wanted to include that in here. There was also some mention of petroglyphs, and we know at Wilderstein, there's the one there. I hadn't heard of this one before, but it was one that was mentioned, and you know, it's called the bear petroglyph. You can see, I've got a little pointer here. You can see that the bear's head is here, and he's looking over, kind of over his shoulder, perhaps. And it's along a trail in the lower Hudson Valley. So, has anybody ever seen this?
Nope.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it either. So, you know, but clearly evidence of art being done a long time ago. So then we get into the colonial period, and what seemed to be going on at the time is pretty much a reflection of what was happening in Europe. John Trumbull is one of the most notable people from that period, and he was on the British side in the Revolutionary War, and so, you know, was not welcome in the United States after a certain period. But this particular painting was of a moment in the surrender of the British general John Burgoyne at Saratoga in 1777. So mainly he was doing historical work, mainly it was to try to capture actual events. And in this case, apparently, he was offering portraits of specific officers. So it wasn't just, you know, kind of a general feeling of the scene. It was you know, a way of capturing what was actually going on at the time. So this is apparently a turning point in the American Revolution. He didn't paint only in New York State. He painted, you know, various other places, you know, throughout New England and so on. But this was a scene that took place here. So, moving toward the Hudson River School, what we found is that, or what we see is that the early people coming in, for the most part, Henry Hudson and all those that followed, were mainly thinking about the Hudson River as a source of commercial potential. So, you know, they were thinking about the farmland that looks like it could be good, about the beaver skins that could be traded, and so on. And so it wasn't until further along, kind of at the beginning of the, well, toward the end, I guess, of the 18th century, that there was this reflection of a discourse going on in Europe about landscape being this amazing, lovely, sublime, and even fearsome subject that could be painted. So, you know, Constable and Turner were part of that early inspiration. In 1825, the Erie Canal opened, and with that, some of that commercial potential really began to be realized. So people were making more money. There was this kind of idea coming over from Europe that we should pay attention to landscapes, that they were beautiful and worthy of putting on your wall, and money began to flow to Hudson Valley, what would become the Hudson Valley School. So the guy who's considered kind of the founder of the school is Thomas Cole. He has a place over in Catskill, or he had a place over in Catskill. It's still there. It's a nice place to visit. You can see his studio. You can see some of his paintings and some of those of other people who were around him at the time. And let me just read a couple of points about him. Considered the first truly great painter of the Hudson Valley School. He actually only lived 47 years. He was born in 1801, died of pleurisy. He was born in England and then immigrated to the United States in 1818. After some time in Ohio, he moved to Philadelphia and, you know, began work painting and began kind of tuning in more to this European notion of landscapes as romantic and interesting, and decided that he wanted to move to the Hudson Valley, and found the place in Catskill. where he could, see the mountains, see the rivers, waterfalls, splendor. And his first artwork, or his kind of moment, was in 1825 when his work was discovered by three luminaries of the day. So Asher Durand, John Trimble, we just saw his work, and William Dunlap. So they were three well-known artists. And they, kind of got him going and supported his work, and he became, well-known at the time. So in addition to the regular landscape work, he was also doing this kind of allegorical work. And it was considered to be a higher style of landscape painting at the time. So, this is one particular work. It's called The Return. There was an earlier work that is paired with it, and I've forgotten what it was called exactly, but it was basically when somebody was heading out, and this is when they're returning kind of at the end of life, after a long, difficult life. Drawing on history and poetry and, and that kind of work, along with kind of the more simple landscape work, was picked up by his student, Frederick Church. So Frederick Church, Olana, which we looked at, he's the person who built that. So he was a student of Cole's, and in the 19th century, he became the most famous artist in the United States, according to this source. Best known for adventurous travels, bold paintings of the natural world, born in Hartford, Connecticut, and decided early on he wanted to become an artist. So he got connected up through another artist with Cole, became his pupil, started working with him very closely. And Cole noticed that Church had the finest eye for drawing in the world. So at age 22, he became the youngest artist to be elected to the National Academy of Design in New York. So, he was very successful. He was doing very well. He had some funds, probably family money as well. He was traveling around the world and became quite entranced with Middle Eastern art and architecture, and built Olana, which is wonderful to visit if you haven't. And the other thing he started doing was creating these very, very large paintings, which became kind of a happening in themselves. They were exhibited in New York City. People would line up. People would pay to see them. Again, it was a time maybe when there wasn't a lot of other media, to distract people. And so this is one of the most famous. He did a series of 3 of Niagara Falls, and this is one of the most famous. Somebody said this is Niagara with the roar left out. At the same time, Erie Canal, more commercialization, the Hudson River was undergoing a change, and there was more industrialization happening. And there was this kind of very romantic view of the Hudson in many cases, but there were also some artists that were painting the reality, or one aspect of the reality that included scenes such as this one. So those are kind of the big two in the Hudson River School, but there were a lot of other folks too. And I just want to show you a few pictures of some of the other people that were well known at the time. So Asher Durand, this is one of his pictures, one of his paintings, the beaches. Kind of a new emphasis on more of the sublime, more drama, but at the same time, that interest in naturalism. And then we have Sanford Robinson Giffords. This is the Catskill Clove, so over, on the Catskill side of the river. Really emphasizing light, atmosphere, trying to get that kind of glow, which many of us still aspire to from the Metropolitan. And then the one female artist at the time who got much of any notice at all was Susie Barstow. And she was doing a lot of traveling around the world. She was an inveterate hiker and, adventurer and, was out there with her paintbrush. And she was fairly well known at the time, but, this site, Art Her Story, makes the point that there are female artists that have not been, very well known or appreciated over time. So I wanted to make sure to include her as well. And then George Innes is someone who's kind of in a transitional period. So the Hudson River School, around this time, end of the 1800s, was kind of in decline. People were feeling like, it was not as interesting. There was more, the Impressionists and the people the Barbizon School and others were kind of taking place in public eyes as of more interest. George Innes is considered to be kind of a transitional figure, and you can see his work is more impressionistic. He's often called tonalist. The colors are muted. There's a kind of a spirituality associated with it that was very important to him. So if you want to see more of his work over at the Clark, we've got some really nice pieces. And this I put in to kind of represent everything since. There wasn't much associated with the Hudson Valley per se after the Hudson River School. But of course there's lots and lots of work going on by different people, different media. Wendy Red Star, I don't know, I could have picked any number of different people, but she's somebody who's got some work in the Thomas Cole collection, kind of experimental, kind of interesting. You might look her up if you want to. So, any comments or questions about anything I've talked about so far? Yeah.
At an earlier painting, I think it was a church painting, where you said this could be a composite. Can you explain what that means?
Well, it probably wasn't done based on just one scene. So he was probably drawing, some mountains ideas here and maybe some river ideas here, that kind of thing. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. One more section. Okay. So I also said I'd talk about the work that I do and how I do it. Let me just ask, how many people would consider themselves artists in any way in this room? Okay. Kind of, yeah. Yes, right. Okay, so feel free to chime in with any comments you have on anything I have here or how you go about doing things. So landscape painting is my main thing. I've also been doing some work on figures more recently. So in this case, I'm kind of including some of them. And very recently, because we've been painting indoors, I've been working on some still lifes, which are fun as well, but really different. But I want to just kind of walk you through what I do when I'm coming up with a painting. And I can see the partner with whom I did this series here, Jenny, who's also a member of our Red Hook group. So the first thing, if you're painting outside, you're kind of out there and picking your scene, but the alternative is starting with a photo. And so what you do when you're picking a photo is, first of all, you want to think about composition. What is it that's going to set you up for a painting that's going to be compelling? And there can be a lot of aspects of this, but one that comes up often is the rule of thirds. So the idea is that you've got kind of like a tic-tac-toe board on your image, and ideally your focal points or more interesting points are going to be at the inner corners of that board. So this photo works pretty well from that point of view. You've got the kids down in the lower left there. There are other things you take into account, obviously, but a lot of it is kind of intuitive. I keep kind of looking for resources on composition and trying to get better at it, but you mostly have to kind of feel it. So there are some rules, but not too many. You also look for something with some contrasts usually. So where you've got some, you're going to have an interesting set of images that you can work from. And you also may want to look for the right amount of detail. So maybe something that's not too complicated because you could get lost in all that detail. You want something where you can potentially come up with a focal point or something that helps people to kind of look through the picture and come up with something that grabs them, I guess. But more than anything else, you want something that personally connects. You want it to, affect you personally, and so it's worth your time to invest in it. So my setup. Okay, I thought about bringing this today. I didn't bring the whole thing, but you can kind of get the idea. So you need, if you're going to paint outside, you need a portable easel, and that's what I'm using there and what I had in that first picture too. So the one I use is just like a photo tripod with a box on the front and a kind of a picture holder on top. And it's quite light. I can put it in the backpack along with all these other things and, go walking somewhere not too far away. Then you need your paints. Solvent is traditionally is turpentine, but these days, I usually use a kind of a brand of mineral spirits, Scamsol, that seems to work well. And what you're using it for mainly is cleaning your brushes, and then sometimes you want to thin your paint a little bit, so you're going to use it for that. You're also going to use a medium in many cases, which is something that will, something that will make your paint slide more easily. So it could be linseed oil. There are various products, that people use. And depending on whether you like to lay paint on heavy or thin, you're going to choose different kind of medium. Then you've got your surface, and I usually paint on, linen boards about that big. Some people use canvases, some people use paper. The great masters sometimes use cardboard. Kind of whatever you've got. Brushes, paper towels, and a garbage bag. So that's my full kit. You try to remember it all when you go painting and, not miss too many things. And if you do miss things, you hope you're painting with somebody who's got them with them. Okay, so paint, the paint, I use oil paint. The other common one is acrylic, watercolor, pastel is still often spoken of as a paint. The good thing about oil paint is that because it dries slowly, you can mix your colors, you can blend them. It doesn't, you can work out corrections pretty easily. You don't like something that goes down, you can go over it either right at the time or later on. The bad thing, it's kind of messy. It's hard to travel with. There's, health concerns have been raised, and some people try to use a studio that doesn't include like the turpentine or the mineral spirits for health reasons. I'm still using those. As far as the colors go, many artists, including me, use what they call a split color. So it's the primary colors, but you're trying to have kind of like a warm version and a cool version of each color. So warm being more toward on the red yellow end of things, and cool being on the blue green end of things. And so even with all these different primaries, you can get cool and warm versions. So I use those 6. I can give you specifics if you want. But, and then I pick up other colors that are just going to be useful. So white, you've got to have. You're going to use it all the time. I don't actually use black, but I do use a Payne's gray, which is like a really dark blue. I use a cool gray, which is like a very light cool gray blue that pushes things back. Like if you're doing mountains, that's super useful. I use a yellow ochre because that just works for a lot of plant life, especially when it's mixed in. Yeah, that's basically those things. And, it gets messy on the palette. I just thought I'd show you what it looks like. There's the Scamsol off to one side and brushes, and the white I keep handy because I'm probably adding it pretty often.
You should make a painting of that. That's wonderful.
I have seen paintings of those, yeah. So indoor landscape painting. So it's a lot like if you're painting outdoors, except it's got certain advantages and disadvantages. The advantages, of course, being temperature. That you've already got a 2-dimensional image that's cropped. You don't have to, when you're standing outside a lot of times, you're just like, where do I start? And you could maybe be seeing many beautiful or interesting scenes and having trouble deciding where to go. The downside is it's an indirect experience. You don't have that same feeling that you have when you're outside kind of, in a natural environment and connecting with it. And that, to me, that's been really important. The other thing about photographs is the colors often are pretty different and the detail is often different. So those are things that, you kind of have to take into account based on your knowledge of the scene and so on. Aside from the temperature, there's also the bugs, the dogs that run by, sometimes people that want to tell you how they don't draw stick figures, and anyway, that can be fun too. I don't really mind that. So it's nice having somebody to paint with. There's Jenny. We were painting together that day, so. Okay, so getting started. So what I do is I use a tone background. So I take a board that's already got gesso on it, and I put, my preference personally is to use either like a reddish, orangish background or sometimes a black background, which gives a different effect. And ideally what you'll do, and I didn't bring it with me, is especially if you're outside, you're going to do some thumbnail sketches probably to just try out some different compositions. Indoors, you might be a little less likely to because you're working with a photograph and you've already got, kind of a crop there. And then you're going to start by blocking in your big shapes. At least that's what I'm going to do. I mean, different people do different things. And some people will do like a drawing first, and others will use more kind of like big, what's the word? Kind of big shapes instead of like an outline. Okay, starting to paint. So where do you start? You've got this drawing in there, but where are you going to lay down paint first? Well, there's a lot of different opinions about that, and I personally don't do it the same way every time. Some people think you should start where you want to emphasize, whatever you think is kind of the most important, and while your excitement is there for that spot. Some people want you to start with just the lightest colors first, some with the darkest colors first. You can do any of those, or kind of whatever inspires you. I started here with the water. It seemed the most important to me. I wanted to make sure I got that white really clean. I did the sky next, partly because I already had blue on my brush and I could kind of work with that. And skies are one of those things where there are some rules that are worth keeping in mind anyway. Usually the sky is lighter and warmer toward the horizon. So you kind of keep that in mind. Doesn't always apply. You want to think about where your clouds are going to go. Make sure you've got something going on there. Think about gradients. If it's all one blue, it's going to be less interesting than if you've got like a dark blue over here moving into a lighter blue or into a greenish blue or a pinkish blue. I did the rocks next, starting with the shadow sides. They were pretty straightforward, but I still wanted to get some variation in there, so I used some warm and some dark colors. Some warm and some cool colors combined in there. And then on the other side, also thought about blending colors as well. Emphasizing the edges. You don't want your rocks to look mushy, and you want to make sure that they sit in the horizon also, so you try to make sure you got some dark at the bottom. And then I put the people in. So one thing about people is you have to be pretty darn accurate because everybody knows what people look like. So, so you can't be too far off and get away with it. You can, change water and skies and things like that, but not so much with people. So, I'm still working on trying to kind of get good with my people, but so I put them in. You got to be accurate. Make sure you know where the light source is and that you're consistent with it, and that your shadows go where they should be, based on where the people are sitting and so on. And one thing I wanted to mention is, because of that orange that I used underneath, I don't know how much of it you can see, but some of that orange is peeking through in different places, and that adds to kind of the vibrancy of the painting. So. And that's it. That's the painting. So, thank you. And my last thing is I'm just going to mention quickly, sorry, a few people that I think if you ever want to, you should look up. I put them on your handout also. So John McDonald, took a class with him once, amazing, great landscape painter. Tad Retz, really young guy, lives up by Syracuse. Just Mary Garish, she's known as a tonalist, and her color choices and her landscapes are just gorgeous. Marie Cole lives over in Tivoli, and is somebody that many of us already know and does beautiful landscapes. Christine Lashley, again, she's got that luminous feeling. Jim Coe, Rosemary and I paint with him. He's lives just to the north of here and does amazing landscapes and also does birds, which are kind of amazing. And that's it.
All right.
So that was yeah.
Where was that location that you painted and who were those people?
Okay, so that was on the Oregon shore, so not the Hudson Valley. And I was there with my sisters this past summer and just took some photographs. So, yeah.
Besides the Tivoli Art Gallery, where else can we see your work?
Thank you for asking that. I'm a member at the Tivoli Art Gallery and also at the Art Gallery 71 here in town. And typically I have work up in both of those places. I also wanted to mention, I talked about that Red Hook group that we have got. We have painters, there's probably 10 or so of us that'll be, I'll just pass these around if anybody wants. There's not enough for everybody, but we're having a show of the work we've been doing on April 26th is our reception, and it'll be up for the month of May. And the Red Hook Community Center has just been wonderful as a partner on this. They provide us with the space for free, and they actually provide art materials so that anybody who wants to can come and join at any point. It's really been wonderful. So.
What persuaded you to start painting?
I'm not sure. I just felt an attraction, and then once I started, it kind of grabbed me. But I hadn't really done it earlier in my life other than just like doing things with my kids. So. But I think it was the combination of the painting and then the way of being outdoors.
Was there a particular painter that you talked about earlier, a Hudson Valley painter that you were particularly impressed with, or somebody else's work?
I mean, I connect more with people that are more toward the impressionistic end of things, really, than the Hudson Valley painters. I mean, they were into this very kind of more precise style, and I think I like kind of a looser, more emotional style. But Jim Coe, who I mentioned, is one of the people that from early on I was impressed with his work and have tried to work with him. He's local. So.
You paint with, you take the board, the linen board, and then you put a color over it. Does it matter what color?
You sound like you have an
and
opinion about that.
Okay, well, and wait, it's a two-part question.
Okay.
And if you put the color on first, and it's oil paint, how many years do you have to wait for it to dry?
Do you want to say something about that?
Well, yes, it makes a huge difference what color you prime to. I mean, it influences all the subsequent colors that go on top of it and what you see through it. As does the texture of your surface make a huge difference. But there's so many artists in the room. I was just nodding enthusiastically.
Since you were nodding, I was, yeah.
Could you repeat what you said? We couldn't.
I couldn't hear her.
The base color affects the colors that are put on top. Yeah. So, as does the texture.
But it's oil paint, so it's kind of like a shield each time you put a color down, isn't it?
Depends how thin it is, how it is.
So the toning I'm doing, I'm usually doing it ahead of time. So I'm usually doing that, a week or more before I'm going to go out and paint and use that board. And I also I use acrylic, which dries a lot faster. But that's just a choice. I mean, so I could, with the acrylic, I probably could do it on site and have it dry soon enough. The reddish colors vibe really well with the blue and the greens in most outdoor paintings. So they're complementary colors. So they're, it's gonna be a good guess that I can get away with a reddish color, but it works for a lot of different things.
You really have to do that.
You don't have to, no. I mean, many people will start with a white board, but a lot of people like some kind of tone, partly just because it's intimidating to start with white.
So are you self-taught, or did you have a mentor, and how do you go about that, and what would you recommend for people that would want to learn?
Yeah, so I started with this guy whose gallery, I was taking lessons with this guy, Richard Lyle, who since left town and lives in the Southwest and paints there. I mean, they're probably better people than me to answer this, but I guess, like, I will defer to you in a minute, but I guess my approach has been to get a foundation with somebody who can kind of get you started and help you to understand basics like, how to set up an easel and what colors go with what, and, take you out and give you feedback and that kind of thing. And what I've been doing since then is taking workshops, usually about 2 a year, where I can paint with somebody whose work I really like and get feedback and so on. And also just getting feedback from other artists. So, do you want to say anything as either of you guys?
It's not my field, but,
What was the question? I'm sorry.
How do you get started?
Oh, how do you start? Oh, boy. How do you start making
Painting.
art in general, you mean?
or painting,
Or painting?
painting landscapes. Classes.
You Google teachers in the area.
It's,
Yeah.
everybody's
mean-
different. But sometimes you start as a photographer, let's say.
No,
and-
but landscape
And
painting.
then you want to add something to the photograph that maybe the camera doesn't get, so you can turn it into a painting, that's one way of approaching it. That's a tough one to answer, really.
I have an opinion. Go to the Woodstock School of Art.
Oh,
That's a good one,
Yes.
yeah.
Call
Yeah.
them and ask them what classes they have that would be good for somebody who's starting.
Excellent suggestion, yeah.
Or do you want to stay at home, start playing around on YouTube, Googling, there's some,
There's some good people,
And
yeah.
also, a really traditional way to train is by copying. And so, buy a book, and start copying. That's the traditional way to want to train.
But it helps to have,
The Omega Institute too, right in Rhinebeck, they started having more and more painting classes and art classes of all kinds. And that might be a place to go. I've taken classes there, and been really happy. And they have 1 days, and they sometimes have 5-day workshops or weekend workshops, so it's really quite a resource. And then online, there are a lot of artists that, like you go on YouTube, you see somebody you like, and often they're free. If you like them, you can take a few classes, just kind of experiment.
were you going to say?
I started with John Nagy on TV.
Oh, yeah.
That's how old I am. But really, he's the one who got me started with art. Yeah. Anybody remember John Nagy? No? No. Oh, well, he used to give art lessons on TV, and this is in the 50s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Late 50s,
Yeah.
early 60s.
I personally would want to be in the room with somebody to start, and then I've done online classes and stuff since then, but yeah. Were you going to add something?
When did you consider yourself an artist?
I first was willing to show paintings about 4 years ago. Show paintings in a gallery or anything more than giving them away to family members. So, but that's a personal choice, and I feel like I'm still very much a work in progress. So, yeah. Especially when you look at those last paintings. Anyway,
Have you worked in watercolors?
I've tried a couple times. It's really hard. I think it's harder. Yeah, but it's beautiful. Yeah. And, the approach is really different in that you, with watercolor, you kind of have to make sure your white stays white before you add anything else in the way of colors, as opposed to this kind of work, you kind of cover your whole canvas with colors. So.
Well, speaking of watercolor, right here in Rhinebeck, Betsy Jackarusso is a
Yeah.
terrific watercolor teacher, and
Yes.
and she gives lessons in her gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
That's a good point.
good place to start there.
very good, yeah. Did everybody hear that? Betsy Giacaruso is, yeah. Yeah. So, any other final thoughts? Yeah.
Just for entertainment value more than for practical, modern day painting, you can always read Cellini or Alberti from the Renaissance, which describe how to become a painter. But it's a different world, but it is step by step.
Oh,
I mean,
interesting, yeah.
if you're interested in
Oh, he's good.
Where do you get that?
Alberti, upstairs in the library, I would hope, certainly on interlibrary loan.
Okay. So it's
written-
you're saying it's a book?
These are books.
Okay.
These are books written in the 1400s.
Okay,
So
well,
they're step-by-steps how to become a painter.
okay, interesting.
Painting, actually
Interesting.
is the title.
Yeah.
It's still useful if you want to go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.